to my channel. First of all, happy autumn. I don't know where you live, if it's actually autumn or not, but I'm already getting into the autumn vibes. So yeah, enjoy this lovely season. So I wanted to share with you all the books that I read in the last 3 months. I haven't been able to get around to showing you guys everything that I read and my thoughts and reviews about these books. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to share with you everything I read so far. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to start off with the first set of books that I read. So this is the first 3 books of the Shatter Me series by Tahira Mafi. And I have been a Tahira Mafi fan ever since I read The Woven Kingdom. And so I really wanted to read the Shatter Me series because it's so popular. And you know what? I loved it. I read the first 3 books, which is Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and Ignite Me. And I'm yet to read Restore Me and the other books in the series. But oh my god, it was just amazing. Granted, the character driven personalities and the character development was not as great, but the plot and the storyline was just brilliant. So it kind of kept me going, and I also rooted for a lot of characters in the book apart from the main female protagonist. So that was again a big plus. Now, this story takes place in like a dystopian world where we have our female protagonist who is chained up in like king's castle because whoever she touches burns up into fire and dies. So she doesn't know what's going on in the outside world. She's been there for a really long time, as far as she can remember, and suddenly she gets like called by the prince and tasked in doing something, and she doesn't know what's happening, and she just plays along. And through the course of the book, so she actually escapes, and then she understands there's a rebellion. She joins a bunch of rebels. It's just amazing so far. I know a lot of people actually don't like the series. I've read a lot of negative reviews for this book, but honestly, I think I can understand why, because this book is hugely plot driven, and there's not much space to develop every single character. And I think probably that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like it. But I personally enjoyed the book, so I would definitely highly recommend it if you're looking for something in that similar aspect to read. The next book I read was A Keeper of the Lost series. Now, I really wanted to find myself a nice middle grade book that I wanted to delve into, and The Keeper of the Lost series has a bunch of books in the series. I think at least about 10 or so, if I'm not wrong. So I really wanted to try and give it a shot. But unfortunately, I couldn't get involved in the book as much. It kind of like, for me, fell flat. I'm not really sure why. The plot, however, was really amazing. It's very Harry Potter-esque. So just like the way Harry like finds out he's a wizard on his like birthday and get whisked away to Hogwarts, we find out that our main female protagonist here is an elf. So she gets whisked away to like this whole kingdom that she never knew existed, and the story then begins to, you know, try and show us how she becomes one of the Keeper of the Lost series. And I kind of felt like the plot was brilliant, but I never really felt connected to any of the characters in the book, let alone our main female protagonist. She was just like a little annoying for me, and she kept making all these like irritating decisions. I don't know. I think that this probably wasn't for me, so I'm gonna give this rest of the series a pass. The next book I read was King of Scars. Now, if you have not gone into the Grishaverse world, I would highly recommend you do, because it's one of the amazing worlds that was created by Leigh Bardugo. For me, Six of Crows was my favorite. I loved Kaz, and I loved the whole heist that they do and everybody that we meet across along the way. It was just an amazing book for me. And I kind of expected the same thing with King of Scars, but unfortunately, it didn't do that for me. It felt like there was so many things that were happening in this book. They were good, I will give that. But there was like little to no Kaz in the book, and that already was like a downer for me, and I did not feel as invested in the characters that were shown in this book as much as I was in Six of Crows. So I went through it, I thought it was okay, but I probably would not continue this duology. The next book I read was House of Sky and Breath, and I need to talk about this book. If you have read any of Sarah J. Maas's books, then you definitely need to also read this. This is her foray of entry into adult fantasy. The first book was House of Earth and Blood, and it was amazing. And this is the second book, which is House of Sky and Breath. I took my time reading it because I wanted to like really involve myself with the characters in the book. Now, all of the characters in the book are just brilliant. There is a lot going on in this book, but somehow you could keep track of everything. It didn't feel like you were lost in the plot. It didn't feel like, you know, you had no idea what was happening. Nothing of that sort. So I will definitely give that a thumbs up. The book is huge, so sometimes in the middle you just kind of feel like it's a little bit like slow paced, so you might like jump through quite a bit, but towards the end it was just like mind blowing. The last 100 pages was brilliant. And the same thing happened with House of Sky and House of Earth and Blood actually. So the last 100 pages are just so tightly knit that you can't get your eye off a single sentence. It was that brilliant. So I would definitely recommend this series. I think there are going to be more books in this. So if you haven't read this, try the first book, which is House of Earth and Blood, and then you can try House of Sky and Breath. The next book I read was Kingdom of the Wicked. So I really wanted to read a Kerry Maniscalco book for a really long time. I've got Stalking Jack the Ripper with me, but I haven't really begun reading it. And I saw Kingdom of the Wicked, and this is already a trilogy that's complete as of this year, with Kingdom of the Fear coming. So I really wanted to like give it a go. However, I didn't feel as invested. I kind of felt like I was going through this book really quick because I wasn't invested in any of the characters. I wasn't really keen on the plot. I mean, the idea was amazing, but I just felt like it wasn't flushed out brilliantly, or at least for my like taste. So I think I'm gonna give the rest of the series a pass. The next book I read was Scarlet, and this is the second book in the Luna Chronicle series by Marissa Mayer. I read Cinder about, I think, a couple of years back, and I thought it was okay, but I never really got around to reading the rest of the books. And I thought I should give Scarlet a chance, and I tried reading it, but unfortunately, again, this was a no-go for me. I don't think I'll continue the series as well. I thought Cinder was much better, and I expected things to like pick up, but it kind of like felt a little flat for me, this one. If you haven't heard about the Luna Chronicles, all of these books are based off of loosely retellings of fairy tales. Cinder being Cinderella, Scarlet being the Red Riding Hood, and then there are a few more books in the series that follow different main characters from different fairy tales. The whole concept was very amazing, except that all of this is like set in like a sci-fi dystopian world, which is even more amazing. So the whole idea of it was, I thought, very thrilling, but somehow I did not feel like the story was as much. I know a lot of people who love the Luna Chronicles, so I don't mean any hatred to any of you, but it's just not for me. I think the next book I read was, of course, there's going to be a David Walliams book. There's always going to be a David Walliams book in all of my videos, isn't it? So I read The Ice Monster, which I thought was again beautifully written. If you're looking for something middle grade-ish with a model, something that's really heartwarming and something that make you smile and cry, then I definitely recommend any of the David Walliams books. Now this book, Ice Monster, is about a huge mammoth-like creature that gets found in the Arctic and gets transported to London to be stationed at a museum. We have our main character, who is a small, measly little girl who's an orphan, who wants to meet the mammoth and set it free. Now she meets a scientist who brings the mammoth to life, and then she sets it free, and all havoc goes crazy in London. So I really enjoy this book. It's always amazing that all of the main characters in David Walliams' books are not like, you know, the strong, handsome guy, or like this most pretty girl who is a damsel in distress, you know, the cliches. And they're all like, you know, normal children whom we can relate to, and they do like these extraordinary things. So I really love this book. It was amazing, so I definitely recommend it. Another book I read was again by David Walliams, and this was Fing. This is about a little girl who is spoiled for choice, and she wants always some Fing. So she can't pronounce something, so she says something. Her parents don't know what a thing is, and they tries to find it out by looking at books in the library, by checking out the different shops to understand what a thing is. And finally they find out thing is like this weird creature that's probably living in the deepest, darkest jungles of nowhere, and the father undertakes like a trek to go and get this creature for his daughter. But I think that the story is so heartwarming and so beautiful. It's definitely not something that, that's a happy ending or nothing of that sort. But it's always like something sweet happens and you end up smiling, or someone deserves what they get. I'm sorry, gets what they deserve. It's just an amazing book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The next book I read was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really need to talk about this book. So, if you haven't heard about Taylor Jenkins, there are a lot of other books of hers, like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or Carrie Soto's Back. All of these books are like huge bestsellers, and I want to read one of her books, and I picked Malibu Rising because it's more like something that I would read at a beach, more like an Emily Henry types. It was good. I will give that, but I kind of didn't feel like what I was reading, or I kind of didn't feel like I was actually reading anything, because there was like it was a very simple story. It's about a girl who goes back to her beach house in Malibu along with her brothers that she meets once a year, and then she tells us a story of what's happening to her right now versus another point of view which happens to her parents 30 years back. I kind of liked her parents' story much better and more than hers, but I was hoping for some redemption. Like, I didn't want the daughter to make the same mistakes her mom did. I kind of felt like killing some of the characters in the book because they just made bad decisions all the time. But again, I guess that's how life is at times. And after I finished the book, I mean, it was a really easy breezy read. I kind of went through it like real quick. But once I was done, I wasn't really sure what I read, because this didn't feel like, a contemporary story, or this didn't feel like something that had an ending of sorts. It's just a page out of a life of a family, and that's about it. So if you're into reading something like that, I would highly recommend it. But this is a bestseller, and so at least for that, I think I should give it a try. Next book I read was The Ichabod by J.K. Rowling. Now this book actually surprised me because I picked it up thinking it was a children's book, and I think it's marketed to children. However, as an adult, when you read this book, it feels like there is so much that the author is trying to convey to adults via the writing of a children's book, and I thought that was a very brilliant concept. The book actually is very simple. It's about like this made up world where you have like two towns, and there's a king who rules the towns, and the people are segregated based on the characteristics. So there are like good looking rich people who live on one side of the town, and then like these sad, not so successful people who live on the other side of the town. And they keep hearing these legends about Ichabod, a monster that apparently exists, and one day when the king goes hunting, he sees the Ichabod and realizes that this monster really exists and it's not a legend that came out of nowhere. So immediately he puts up like, we need to kill the Ichabod, and the whole story starts that way. But we meet a lot of different characters along the way who make like the most stupidest decisions ever. But the part that I loved about the book was you don't really like invest in any of the characters, but still you can go through the whole book and enjoy it. And I think that's kind of like rare. So I would recommend Ichabod if you haven't read any of these kinds of books before. It was really interesting. The next book I read was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I really always wanted to read a Sabaa Tahir book, and I wanted to give Ember in the Ashes a go because the fourth book just came out this year, and I think the series is now closed or ended. And I wanted to understand what the series is about because it has a lot of hype, a lot of rave reviews, but unfortunately I didn't enjoy it as much. I kind of felt like it fell flat. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like any of the characters. I wasn't invested in anything related to the book. So I'm just gonna give it a pass. The next book I read was The Secret of Dumbledore, which is the third book in the Fantastic Beasts series. If you haven't watched the movie yet, the story is about Dumbledore and his past with Grindelwald, and an overrunning rule that has been taking place in Germany. So I actually saw the movie and read the screenplay, and I kind of felt like the screenplay did so much of justice that I'd probably go back and see the movie again, because there are like so many snippets and illustrations in the book that gives you like a more in-depth view of all of these characters, which I thought was brilliant. So I highly recommend this book, especially if you're into illustrations and snippets of what the actors say or the directors say when they're filming the movie. The next book I read was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I wanted to read Poppy War because Babel was getting released sometime later this year, by R.F. Kuang, and before I bought Babel, I wanted to see if I liked R.F. Kuang's writing. I'm not a huge high fantasy person. I'm really bad and picky with my high fantasies. There are very few books that I like when it comes to high fantasy, so I'm really hard to please when it comes to that. So I knew that I probably may or may not like Babel because of my personal taste, and I wanted to try Poppy War before I went to Babel. And I think I got a clear-cut idea that I may not end up liking Babel because I did not enjoy Poppy War as much. It was a great book. It has a brilliant reviews, and it kind of felt like a little bit Mulan-ish for me. A lot of the story felt very reflective of Mulan, if you've seen that before. I also didn't like some of the storylines around women in the book. I think that's like a trigger warning, so I probably will not read Babel or any of R.F. Kuang's work later, but if you guys think otherwise, let me know in the comments below and I will definitely give it a try. And the last book I read, which I really want to talk about, is Empire of the Vampire. Now this book surpassed everything that I thought a book should be. It was amazing in every aspect. Characters, brilliant. Plot, brilliant. Storyline, brilliant. Characterization, brilliant. Like every aspect of this book was just amazing. Like the first 3 chapters, I was hooked. I literally could not peel my eyes away from the book. I was like flipping pages, and then I realized that I wanted to like invest in this book as much as I could, and then I took it really slow. It took me 3 months to finish it, to be honest, but it was so worth it. It's a really fat book, and we follow Gabriel de Leon, who is not the perfect person, but he is broken in his own ways, and we live through him in the book, and I thought he was a brilliant protagonist. We also meet a lot of different characters. Astrid was my favorite, who his female point of interest was, and she was so strong and so amazing. Her lines were like so punchy and so feely. I just loved everything about this book. I'll just give out a warning though, this is not for children or middle graders or young adult. It's purely targeted to an adult audience because there are so many scenes in the book that wouldn't probably go well with anybody else. So if you're into something vampirish, but not Twilight vampirish or House of Night or Vampire Academy, nothing of that sort. These are pure blood-sucking vampires who kill people. I would definitely recommend this book. It was so intense, like every page of the book was so intense that I couldn't get my eyes off of it. I was literally reading like the last, I think 300 pages in like one day. I also think that this book should it's overhyped for a reason because it was really that good. So I would definitely recommend it. So those were all the books that I read in the past 3 months. I hope you enjoyed me talking about these books, giving you my thoughts, my recommendations, and what I felt about it. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Please let me know books that you've read or anything that you probably disagree with me in these books. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. And don't forget to see me in another video. Bye.